How you doing, folks? Mike here again. Welcome back to RCing Around. The theme of today's video is talking about RCs that you regret buying, and it's probably 99% of the time it's going to be something you bought that you thought would be good and turned out to be crap, or bought something that you thought was going to be slightly crap and turned out to be very crap, but not necessarily. For example, the Tamiya lunchbox is probably, I was going to say probably, but definitely the worst RC I own, but it's also awesome. You know, it's great fun. Don't regret buying that at all, but it is terrible. So, you know, just because it's poor doesn't necessarily mean you regret buying it. On a similar note, my Tamiya TL01 I had years and years and years ago, it was the size and shape of a brick. It weighed the same without a battery as it did with one. It had a mechanical wiper arm speed controller in it. It had friction shocks. It screamed its nuts off, but I had a great time with it, and it was my first hobby grade RC, and I don't regret that whatsoever. So yeah, you get a picture. I've got the two trucks here at the moment. Don't worry, I do not regret buying the Pro line. That's not why it's here at the moment. It's just as a comparison. I'll get onto that. But yeah, what I basically want to do is share with you guys any RCs that I've had, and I'll speak for Matthew as well since he's not here. He's never here. He never pulls his weight. Anyway, and then obviously if you have any ideas, what ideas are the wrong word, any thoughts, you know, maybe you've got some in your past, maybe you still have them that you think, yeah, that was crap. But I'll get onto the trucks later on because they feature quite heavily. One of the ones that I personally bought, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad RC, although it wasn't very well received, was the HPI Formula 10, the sort of 1/10 scale Formula 1 car thing with the floating pan rear suspension idea. It has a single shock. I don't know if I can describe it to someone. Long chassis with a sort of floating pan idea. The wheels there, and it's one single shock, so this thing pivots around. Anyway, I bought one of those off of eBay for cheap. Well, it wasn't even that cheap. It was about £50, I think. And it had been built badly and modified even worse. You know, I think someone had taken a hacksaw, literally a hacksaw off the part of the chassis. I'd never seen one before, so I didn't know what I was looking at. So I just thought, oh, Formula 1 car, nice, buy. Yeah, probably some Jack Daniels involved in that purchase. Anyway, yeah, so I found this thing, and it was the chassis was floppy because there was supposed to be like a rigid battery bar across the middle which had been cut away. Anyway, I got the right parts and sorted it, and it had some sort of weird hybrid half ball half gear differential in it because I think there was an attempted upgrade there and they didn't do it right. So yeah, it took a long time because the parts are not made anymore. It was not really very well supported. A lot of that happens a lot in the hobby. Tamiya are good at supporting previous models, probably because they re-release half of them, but some other companies don't do that so well. But anyway, yeah, I eventually got it sort of working, and I spent a fortune on it. I got the really fancy tyres, the soft compound Bridgestone Potenza, I think it was Bridgestone Potenza replicas, with the higher quality wheels, even though they were still plastic. So anyway, they were silver, and basically, yeah, it looked really cool, and I used it once and sold it, so that was a waste of money. But yeah, that wasn't great. Another one was what was it? Damn it, my mind has gone blank. It'll come back to me, probably. Oh, you know what, we'll go to trucks, and it comes back to me, it'll come back to me. Yeah, monster trucks. I love rear wheel drive monster trucks, 1/10 scale rear wheel drives. I think they're brilliant fun. I think they're probably the most fun RC for me on the market. They're just great. You can take liberties with them sometimes, depending on which truck it is. The first one I bought was actually a 4-wheel drive. I bought a Maverick Strada MT Evo. The reason being is I had the Madrat, the Ansman Madrat, which is the opposite of what this video is about. The Madrat's probably the best purchase I've done in RC history because it was less than £100 and it's been a total riot ever since day one. Anyway, yeah, Matthew bought a Step Up Striker MT1, which is a great budget truck. And actually I think the ECX Rocket's somewhat based off it or something because they're very, very similar. And the Step Up sort of disappeared at the same time the Step Up Striker disappeared at the same time the ECX Rocket sort of came on the market. So I don't know how that played out, but anyway, I thought, yeah, I want one of those. I want a monster truck. So, but I got this Maverick Strada NT Evo, and I'm not gonna lie, the reason I bought the Maverick Strada NT Evo Master Truck was because it had 8 shock absorbers, and I just thought 8 shocks is better than 4 shocks. 8 shocks wasn't better than 4 shocks. The Pro line's got 4 shocks, and they're better than, you know, and it's not just the quality of the shock absorbers, they were absolutely fine. The problem was the Maverick Strada NT Evo has plastic bottom deck, and then a steel, or at least it's metal top deck along the top with a drive shaft underneath it, which meant the actual chassis was really rigid. There was no flex in it, basically, you know. But the shock towers were made of cheese. You could do this, you could squish them back and forward. So they were part of the suspension. It was just rubbish. Probably the reason they had to, because the shock tower, if you imagine, switch the car around sideways on like this. The shock towers were here. There was a shock at one side of it and a shock at the other side of it. So they were pushing on the shock tower. One shock there, one shock there. They were pushing on the shock, probably to stop it flopping around so much. I mean, it was just rubbish. And the chassis, the front of the chassis broke first time I used it. Didn't have the right ground clearance. It didn't handle well. It overheated. And it was just junk. Absolute junk, and I ended up trading it in for a grand total of a tenner, I think. So yeah, that was a waste. That was my first monster truck. I was like, right, I want a good monster truck, because Matthew's Striker was great fun, so I'll get another monster truck. I got this, the Losi High Roller. It doesn't look like a Losi High Roller because this is a Traxxas Captain's Curse Monster Jam gel, but it, you know, it's a High Roller. Thing is, I don't regret this truck. This truck has been the most problematic RC I've ever owned. In certain ways it was worse than the Strada, because the Maverick Strada was Maverick priced. This is a Losi. It was priced like a Losi, so it was a lot more expensive than the Strada, even though it's 2-wheel drive R4. And yeah, oh my goodness, this is a flawed machine. I mean, I've said this before, this is probably the highest spec Losi High Roller on the planet. And I'm not kidding. What failed at the start? Put it this way: it came with a brushed motor, mild brushed motor, and with the brushed motor, it ruined the idler gear, because the idler gear is plastic in the gearbox, in amongst a couple of metal gears, which is a bit daft. But anyway, that's what happened. So that got ruined, and then I got an aluminium idler gear from Losi themselves, and then under the standard power, the drive pins in the wheels, in the hexes, and the drive shaft completely fell apart with the standard motor, and it was only like the 3rd time I used it. And so I got the stainless steel CV drive shafts, and I put HPI pins in the wheels so they're stronger. And then I had to get the diff gear. The gear diff was plastic, that got torn apart. So I got the ball diff upgrade that Losi sold, the upgrade ball diff. Where, I mean, I went through 4 of them, I think, in a short while. I think they had steel, yeah, they were steel outer, how do you explain it? The teeth on the outside of the ball diff were steel. It was a steel housing, but and the balls inside were obviously metal, but they were housed in plastic, so they would heat up and melt the plastic. So you'd have like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think it was 12 all the way around. But as they spun, they created they melted the plastic, so they actually shifted around in this plastic. They just went wherever the hell they went. Just the centrifugal force would force them further and further around, and they ended up, the ball diff just was crap. It was useless. So as a result, this truck now has got, I had to get better bearings, because the bearings were terrible in it as well, and the bearing, the number for the part number in the handbook for the bearings didn't fit. The bearings that they said in the handbook for this truck didn't fit this truck. They really dropped the ball. I mean, Losi is my favourite RC company actually, but they really dropped the ball with this thing. So I had to get bearings from an engineering firm, custom sized. They were not cheap. And then I managed to eventually piece together, I don't even know, I can't even remember if they were for this truck or if it was for different parts from something else. I basically made a metal geared diff again. You know, I got everything in it, planetary gears, pins through the planetary gears, the main diff gear itself. I replaced the idler with a steel one, I think, again. I did. And so everything was steel in the gearbox. So it was a solid gearbox, finally. Or so I thought. And then the gearbox housing, the plastic gearbox housing, collapsed. So all the gears are moving around inside it. Okay, I've got a new gearbox housing. Bear in mind, these are all Losi parts each time, but the ones that weren't custom made were Losi parts, so they're not cheap. And it wasn't very well supported, this truck. It didn't sell well, and Losi sort of abandoned part support quite quickly. And then I got a new gearbox housing and or diff housing, I think it was. And then eventually it was ready to go. And then the pin, the small pin, this is metal. It goes through the drive cup on one side, through the gear diff, and back out the other side again. That snapped. I mean, the gearbox is cursed because everything in it is now steel. Everything. And the bit that sort of goes through the middle, keeping the wall centre, so they don't do this. So they spin perfectly on their axis and don't move around. That snapped. After hundreds of pounds. Hundreds of pounds. Furthermore, those weren't the only upgrades I had to do for it. For example, the slipper clutch arrangement wasn't very good, so it's actually got the Kevlar spur gear and the slipper clutch arrangement from the Losi XXX SET. And up the front there was weaknesses too. These front adjustable top links, the camber links, are from some sort of 1/8 truggy or Hong Nor or something. 1/8 buggy, I think, actually. And the caster blocks at the front, they're so weak. Went through plenty of them. So yeah, complete waste of money. And at the end of the day, it's now stripped out, no electronics in it, it's just sitting as a sort of shelfer. But I don't really regret it. That's the thing with the High Roller, I don't really regret it because when it was going, it was so fun, you know. I mean, first of all, look at this stance. The stance is awesome. Compare that to this Pro line. This is a sort of typical monster truck stance. Look at the height. It just sort of lords over other monster trucks. It was great, and it actually ran up over the top of the other ones as well when they met head on. When it didn't break it, obviously, because it didn't take hits very well either. But the best thing about it was, I mean, I like the handling as well. Sorry, I'll go for the handling was really good, despite the fact that it was sticking up like a stick insect. It was really quite good. But the best thing about it was its jumping ability. It was so good at jumping. It could jump level anytime. It could save you if you came off a jump at a funny angle. Say you've approached a jump and you're not square on, you're at an angle, it would save it. But you could play with it in mid-air as well. You could get the front or the back up or whatever. And this big long throw shock absorbers. Big long throw shock absorbers, plenty of suspension travel, which is absorb it. It was great at jumping. So I had a great time with this truck. It was one of my favourites and I don't regret buying the High Roller. After that I replaced it with the HPI jump shot. Most of you might have seen what happened with the jump shot. It was yet another plastic idler gear. Where's my Magnum? Shoot myself again. Yeah, there was no parts available, so that was it. And it wasn't just idler gear, was it? Oh, I've forgotten, isn't it? It was also the diff housing, which itself was a cog. That yeah, plastic. Couldn't handle it. I think the new jump shot fusion, the brushless one's probably strong enough. But and now I'm on to the Proline Pro MT, which is the best monster truck I've ever owned, and it's the best in the market for 1/10 rear wheel drive. So that's cool. That's perfect. And I still haven't remembered what the other model I was supposed to talk about was. If there is I'm not even sure there is another one. Nope. But there are two more RCs I did want to talk about, because the first one was Matthew, because obviously he's part of this channel as well. One thing he regrets buying is this. I don't know if you've ever heard of the company Acme, Roadrunner, and Wile E. Coyote used to buy his stuff from Acme.
Don't get an Acme.
Don't get an Acme.
Don't get an Acme.
I don't even know what Acme is. Is it an American brand? Does it make stuff? Just, oh, here's Acme, it makes stuff from things. You want an Acme cup, you can get an Acme cup. You want an Acme chair, you get an Acme chair. You want an Acme RC, you can get an Acme RC. And I think their cups and chairs must be crap because their RCs are crap. And Wile E. Coyote never did catch the Roadrunner. So yeah, he bought the Acme Circuit Thrash, which was a brushless, ready to run monster truck 110 3-wheel drive. It was junk. You could feel the quality of the plastics were just terrible, but tragic, and the tires felt terrible and all of it, and it could not. I don't want to say this is weak, but it could not take an impact. The reason he got it is the step up striker he gave to Jackie, and then Acme was the in-betweeny one. After that, he got the ECX Ruckus to replace the Acme, because this had a head-on collision with the Acme at very low speed. Boink! And Acme fell apart at the front. It was awful. But then the Acme was supposed to be awful because it was ridiculously cheap. It was not far north of £100 for a ready-to-run brushless truck. So, you know, you kind of get what you paid for in that regard. Not for this. You don't get what you paid for with this. No. And talking about not getting what you paid for. Now, here's the thing. I don't regret this because it's not mine. It's not Matthew's either. But if there's one RC I think most people will regret buying was the, which I actually think, well, let's put it this way, when you're talking about a terrible RC car, obviously price has to come into it, and my neighbours just come home, you probably hear that, but price has to come into it, so it's not just like, oh, this RC is terrible, but it was £60, so it was supposed to be, well yeah, £60. If this RC is terrible and it's £300, then you've got a problem. Who watching here has ever owned or driven a Traxxas E-Revo 1/16 VXL, also known as the Mini E-Revo? In my opinion, all things considered, the worst RC on the market. Period. Just diabolical. Absolutely diabolical as far as I'm concerned. The reason is, okay, it's a small 4-wheel drive sort of truggy truck. They call it monster truck, but it just isn't. It's about that size, 1/16, and it can do 50 miles an hour out of the box. It's a fast RC, but if you've seen it, I did one video with it against my Losi Mini E-T, and you probably saw what happened there. Basically, this RC can go extremely fast in a straight line. And but you think I'm going to say, oh, but it can't take corners. No, it can't take straights. Never mind corners. You've got to build up the speed slowly, because even with the rear wheelie bar, if you slam the throttle forward hard, it's going to land on its face, right? So then you build up the speed slowly. You get to the corner. You can't take the corner, because if you try corner hard, it'll land on its face. So what you have to do is brake before you get to the corner. But you cannot brake when you get to the corner, because it'll land on its face. So it's good for accelerating slowly, get up to a ridiculously high top speed, and then letting go of the throttle. You can't brake because it'll dunk. You got to let go of the throttle, let it coast for a bit, slow down a bit. Now you can apply the brakes, take the corner very slowly, and then go back up the street again. And oh my goodness, how boring is that? And there's several reasons for it. I mean, obviously it's a tiny little RC with a ridiculous amount of power, but my Losi Mini E-T, the Exotech one, geez, it's got just as much power. In fact, on a 2-cell, it outran his. I say his. This was Rachel, my girlfriend. This is her brother who got this. It could outrun his Mini E-Revo on 3-cell. My 2-cell would outrun his 3-cell, and there's a video of it. You can see it on one of our X videos, our old videos. One of the main reasons for it is the chassis. Now, let me just talk about chassis for a moment. I have a chassis over here, very dusty. Should have maybe dusted it off. This is a Losi JR. Look at the state of it. Never used it. JRXS Type R, which was the last touring car Losi ever made, and I loved my Losi touring cars because I used to race one, the Triple XS, and I bought this to be raced, but I've never done it yet. This is an example of a proper chassis. There's been hundreds of R&D hours in this on the chassis alone before getting to any of the components, any of the driveline, any of the suspension, any of the steering, just the chassis. Now, I'm oversimplifying this a lot, but yes, suspension and steering components and tyres and everything have the last say in how a car handles or a vehicle handles. But any vehicle, the basis of how it handles and how it feels and how it behaves is all down to the chassis, because the chassis, again, oversimplifying this a lot, the chassis dictates the centre of gravity, the balance, where it might be strengthened so there's no flex, where it might allow a little bit of flex. The fundamentals of how a car behaves, or any vehicle, not just a car, comes down to the chassis. It's not just simply something for bolting stuff to. Now, the chassis on the Traxxas E-Revo, let's just call it the Mini E-Revo, that wasn't a chassis. That was literally just something to bolt bits to. That's all it was. If you imagine it was two hollow squares, or hollow blocks, which you open the flaps up the side to put the batteries in, so they were literally hollow, connected by a tiny little thin piece of plastic, in the channel in between, so like that, there was the drive shaft. And that's basically it. And it had the cantilever lay down shock absorbers, which gave a ridiculous amount of leverage. So you couldn't tune it like a normal chassis. You didn't have this sort of almost one-to-one relationship, if you like, between force upward and how much suspension movement you had, because it had that lever on that which left on the thing. It was just weird setup. And it's supposed to just, if you have a head-on crash, you can't snap the shocks so easy because something's acting upon the shocks rather than the shocks directly. And it did work in that regard because it didn't break so easy. It was quite a tough little thing. But my goodness, just ill, foul handling, horrible thing. I hated that thing, and if that was me that bought that would be the one RC, the great one, anything else. And the worst thing about it is, and the reason I think it's worse than Matthew's Acme, and worse than my Maverick, and worse than everything else, is because it was priced like a Traxxas. The Acme was priced like an Acme, so it was priced accordingly-ish. Whereas the Traxxas was about £370 or £350 or something like that for something that just did not work. If you bought one of those, put in the comments, do you regret it? You probably do. Right, that's all it is, just a bit of a rant video. Thanks for watching, catch you again soon. Cheers.